Hello and welcome back to Infinite Stories. Today we have a story about a friend of mine who allowed me to use her dream of winning the 6-star medal in one of my stories. For everyone who's unfamiliar, the 6-star medal is a medal that is given to people who compete in various marathons across the world. And without further ado, let's jump right in. Chapter 1: The Land of the Rising Sun and Running Shoes. Lina's Berlin apartment looked as though a sporting goods store had exploded in the middle of a library of computer science textbooks. Half-packed suitcases lay open, spitting out compression socks and energy gels, while a laptop screen glowed with lines of code, a half-finished algorithm for the new logistics app. Lina, a software developer with a cascade of frizzy brown hair, defying its ponytail, tapped her fingers rhythmically on the table, humming a bright Macedonian folk tune. The rhythm matched her heart rate. Allegro con brio. The 6-star medal quest was finally beginning. First stop, Tokyo. The moment she stepped out of the subway into Shinjuku, she felt a delightful jolt of cultural shock. The city was an impossibly clean, orderly, and vibrant symphony of neon signs, polite bows, and the tantalizing scent of ramen. Her mission to find a simple, pre-race pasta dinner turned into a comedic pantomime involving a confused but incredibly patient waiter, her frantic gestures for spaghetti, and the eventual arrival of a delicious but decidedly non-Italian bowl of udon noodles. She ate it with gusto, deciding that carbon loading was a universal language, even if the vocabulary was different. Race day dawned, crisp and clear, standing in the starting corral amidst 50,000 other runners was humbling and electric. The Japanese spectators were a marvel, lining the entire 42.2-kilometer course, offering cheers, high fives, and even sliced tomatoes with a quiet dignity that was somehow more motivating than the loudest roar. Lina ran with a grin plastered on her face, her usual race day scowl replaced by sheer wonder as she passed imperial places and futuristic skyscrapers, crossing the finish line less like an ending and more like a thunderous beginning. The first star for her future 6-star medal was placed around her neck, its weight a satisfying anchor. Exhausted and ecstatic, she found a small park bench, pulled out a notepad, and sketched out a rough plan for her next training block, her mind already racing ahead to Boston. 1 down, 5 to go. The dream, once an abstract algorithm in her mind, was now a tangible, glimmering piece of hardware. She walked back to her hotel that evening, the medal tucked safely in her bag, her frizzy hair now a triumphant halo under the city lights. The sheer scale of the challenge she had set for herself was daunting, a complex problem with variables of time, money, and immense physical strain. But as she hummed her tune, a smile bloomed on her face, bright enough to rival the Tokyo neon. For a dedicated problem solver like Lina, the more complex the problem, the sweeter the solution. Chapter 2: Conquering Heartbreak Hill with Sarcasm and Carbs. Boston was a different beast entirely. Where Tokyo was serene and futuristic, Boston was steeped in gruff history and a hallowed lore of marathon running. The air buzzed with a nervous, prestigious energy that seeped into Lina's bones. At the race expo, a grizzled veteran with a thick Boston accent gave her a 10-minute unsolicited lecture on the treachery of Heartbreak Hill. "It'll chew you up and spit you out if you don't respect it, kid," he'd warned, poking her race bib for emphasis. Lina just smiled, her room brightening smile, and thanked him. mentally adding his advice to her internal strategy file. The New England spring, true to form, was a chaotic mess. The forecast changed every hour, swinging from sunny and warm to freezing rain. Lina spent the night before the race in a comedic whirlwind of indecision, laying out 3 different outfits and muttering about thermodynamics versus breathability. She eventually settled on layers, resigning herself to the fact that she would probably be both too hot and too cold at various points. Practicality over fashion, as always. The race itself was a roar of sound and color. The cheers were deafening, especially as she ran through the screen tunnel at Wellesley College, a wall of sound so intense she laughed out loud. For the first 30 kilometers she felt fantastic, carried along by the city's palpable passion for the event. Then came the Newton Hills, a series of 4 grueling inclining culminating in the infamous Heartbreak Hill. It was here that her optimism began to fray. Her lungs burned and a familiar nagging voice of self-doubt began to whisper in her ear. It was the same voice that told her a line of code was unsolvable, or that she'd bitten off more than she could chew. For a moment, the hill felt less like a physical obstacle and more like a manifest of her own limitations. Gritting her teeth, she pushed back with a mix of sheer Macedonian stubbornness and dark humor. "Call this a hill?" she muttered to herself. "I've debugged more painful legacy code than you." Crossing the finish line on Boylston Street was a triumph of a different kind. It was a grittier, hard-won victory. The second star felt heavier, earned not just with her legs, but with her will. As she limped towards the medical tent, she saw the old Bostonian from the expo. He gave her a curt nod. "Told ya," he grunted, but a small smile played on his lips. Lina knew then that each city would not just be a new course to run, but a new piece of herself to discover and conquer. Chapter 3: London Calling and My Knees Are Moaning. London greeted Lina with a promise of iconic landmarks and the persistent threat of drizzle. Her Airbnb was a charmingly crooked flat in a neighborhood so quintessentially British she expected to see Mary Poppins float by. The room was barely larger than her wingspan, but it had character, which Lina decided was just another word for no space to properly stretch. She spent her pre-race days as a tourist, getting hopelessly lost on the tube and having a one-sided conversation with a stoic beef eater who remained impressively unmotivated by her jokes. The Race Expo was a festival of spandex and enthusiasm. It was there she met Colin the Carrot, a man running his 10th London Marathon in a 7-foot-tall vegetable costume for charity. They bonded over the logistical nightmare of navigating a crowded starting line. Colin concerned about his leafy top and Lina worried about tripping over his roots. The easy camaraderie was a welcome antidote to her mounting pre-race jitters. Race day began under a sky the color of a moody pigeon. The route was a breathtaking tour of history. She ran past the Cutty Sark, her pace synced to the triumphing bass of a roadside DJ, and felt a surge of pure joy as she crested Tower Bridge. The view so spectacular it momentarily made her forget the ache in her quads. The British crowds were magnificent, offering not just cheers, but jelly babies, pins of beer, and witty, sarcastic signs that made her laugh. Just as Colin had predicted, the heavens opened around the 20-mile mark. A sudden downpour soaked the runners, turning Lina's frizzy hair into a glorious untamed storm cloud. The road became slick, and she nearly went down on a sharp turn before a large orange hand steadied her. It was Colin the carrot. "Steady on, mate," he shouted through his mesh face hole. They gave each other a squishy, rain-soaked high five and pushed on. The shared moment of absurdity was the perfect fuel for the final stretch. Finishing on the mall, with Buckingham Palace in the distance, felt surreal. 3 stars. Halfway. The cumulative fatigue was a real physical presence now, a constant companion in her life. Later that evening, sitting in a cozy pub with a pint and a plate of fish and chips, she pulled out a napkin. With Colin the carrot, cheerfully preservance in mind, she began sketching out algorithms and split times for Berlin, a city she knew would present a pressure of a different kind, the pressure of home. Chapter 4: The Berlin Wall and My Own Personal Wall. Being back in Germany for the Berlin Marathon felt different. This was her adopted home turf. Friends from her software company had printed t-shirts with her face on them, a pixelated grinning version of her, and promised to set up a cheer station at kilometer 30. The friendly support, while heartwarming, also draped a heavy blanket of expectation over her. Berlin's course was famously flat and fast, a perfect place for a personal best. Suddenly, just finishing wasn't enough. Now she felt she had to perform. This new pressure bled into her training. She pushed her long runs harder, cut her recovery times shorter, and ignored the twinges in her hamstring. Her ambition, usually a strength, was now verging on a flaw. She was trying to compile a perfect race, forgetting that the human body, unlike a program, couldn't be forced into perfection without breaking. A week before the race, a sharp pain in her knee sent a jolt of panic through her, a warning sign she reluctantly acknowledged. Race day was cool and overcast. Perfect running weather. The first half of the race flew by. The roar from her colleagues at kilometer 30 gave her a massive boost, and she waved, feeling like a champion. She was on pace for a record time, her mind locked on the numbers ticking away on her watch. But her body had been sending error messages for miles, and around kilometer 35 the system crashed. She hit the wall, and she hit it hard. Her vision narrowed, her legs turned to lead, and every stride was an agony. The temptation to stop was overwhelming. This was her crucial decision point. She could push through the blinding pain, risk a serious long-term injury for the sake of a time on a certificate, or she could listen to the screaming protest of her own body. She thought of her goal, not just this one race, but all 6. Burning out here meant fading there. With a deep shuddering breath, Lina slowed to a jog. The decision was agonizing, a blow to her ego, but it was also profoundly liberating. She let the pacers she'd been following disappear ahead. Instead, she focused on the rhythm of her feet, the sound of the crowd, the historic ground beneath her. She crossed the finish line under the majestic Brandenburg Gate, not with a personal best, but with a hard-won piece of wisdom. Her worth wasn't measured in minutes and seconds. The 4-star felt like the heaviest yet, weighted with the lessons of self-preserving. Chapter 5: Chicago Wins and Second Wins. Lina arrived in Chicago feeling like a different runner. The humbling experience in Berlin had recalibrated her entire approach. Her goal was no longer to conquer each city, but to collaborate with it. She spent the days before the race marveling at the city's soaring architecture, sketching the elegant lines of the skyscrapers on her notepad next to her pacing charts. She even allowed herself a small slice of deep dish pizza 2 days before the race, a culinary indulgence her old self would have deemed a cardinal sin. The city's nickname, the Windy City, proved to be no exaggeration. On a shakeout run along the lakefront, a sudden gust nearly ripped her race bib from her shirt, sending her on a comical chase down the pavement. Rather than get frustrated, she laughed. The wind was just another variable, another puzzle to solve. This was the new Lina, more flexible, more resilient, and far more amused by the universe's little challenges. During the marathon, the wind was a relentless, invisible opponent. But instead of fighting it, Lina used her analytical mind. She treated it like a fluid dynamics problem. Tucked in behind a group of taller runners, drafting in their wake and conserve energy. She visualized it as an algorithm for efficiency, a game of strategy that made the miles feel less like a slog and more like a fascinating puzzle. Freed from the tyranny of the clock, she ran with the lightest she hadn't felt since Tokyo. She smiled at volunteers, thanked the police officers directing traffic, and offered encouragement to a runner who was struggling beside her. "We've got this," she said, her voice full of genuine warmth that surprised even herself. She wasn't just executing a race plan, she was participating in a massive, joyful human event. She had found her second wind, not in her lungs, but in her spirit. Crossing the finish line in Grand Park, she felt a surge of profound gratitude. 5 stars. The collection was almost complete. The 6-star medal was no longer a distant summit, but a place she could almost touch. Holding the heavy Chicago medal in her hand, she felt the cool weight of all 5 victories. Only one remained, the big one, the final boss, New York. An Empire state of mind and a 6-star finish. New York City was everything she has experienced and expected and more. A chaotic, vibrant, and unapologetically loud symphony of human existence. The energy was a physical force, a current that swept her up the moment she arrived. As she walked through Times Square, surrounded by the dazzling cacophony of lights and sounds, she felt a wave of nostalgia. She thought of the polite efficiency of Tokyo, the historic grit of Boston, the rainy charm of London, the seldom lesson of Berlin, and the breezy strength of Chicago. Each city had left its mark on her, shaping her into the person standing here now, on the precipice of her dream. The morning of the marathon was a spectacle unlike any other. Standing on the Verrazano Narrows Bridge, looking out at the Statue of Liberty and the Manhattan skyline, she felt a lump form in her throat. The starting cannon boomed. Frank Sinatra's New York, New York blasted from the speakers, and a river of 50,000 runners began its journey through the 5 boroughs. The race was a rolling festival, a 42.2-kilometer block party where every neighborhood showed up to scream its support. The crowds were a living, breathing entity, the energy a tangible wave that lifted her when her legs grew heavy. In Brooklyn, a gospel choir sang Runners Up a Hill. In Queens, the diversity of the world was represented on the sidelines. In the Bronx, a DJ blasted hip-hop that put a rhythm back in her stride. By the time she entered Manhattan for the final push-up, Fifth Avenue, she was running on pure adrenaline and emotion. The last few miles through Central Park were a beautiful, painful blur. Her body was screaming, but her heart was singing. She thought of her parents in Macedonia, who were tracking her online, her friends in Germany, who were spamming her phone with encouraging texts. She saw her reflection in the spectator's sunglasses, exhausted, sweaty, soaked, frizzy hair, white and free, but with a smile so radiant it could have powered the whole city. Crossing the finish line wasn't the explosion of relief she had imagined. It was a quiet, profound sense of arrival. A volunteer placed the New York City Marathon medal around her neck. Then another official approached her with a wide grin. "Congratulations," he said, handing her the magnificent, six-sided Aberthworth Marathon Majors medal, the 6-star medal. She held it in her palm. Its weight the combination of thousands of miles, countless hours of training, and a journey that had spanned the globe. In that moment, Lina knew the medal wasn't the prize. The prize was the person she had become to earn it. I think that was a really inspiring and great story. And if you want to be part of the next story, don't hesitate to write in the comments. I'd love to create one just for you. Thanks everyone. Bye!